Call the meeting to order. The December 19th meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee. Want to welcome everyone today. Just to review, the purpose of the commission is to approve certificates of appropriateness for new construction or major work, and to do so by conducting hearings and findings of fact when applications come before us. Our mission is to take no action except to preserve and approve that which is congruous with the special character of the Pinehurst Historic District. I'm Molly Gwynn, the chairman of the commission. On my right, Eric Von Salzen, Richard Vincent, and Terry Lertz. On my left, Jim McChesney, John Taylor, Tom Schroeder, and senior planner Peter Hughes. Also with us is Kelly Brown, administrative assistant, and Darren Burish, planning director. Thank you all for coming. We have a quorum, so we can proceed. Just to remind you, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, so anyone desiring to testify must be sworn in, and we are required to consider only facts presented in this hearing. The proceedings are video recorded. We have the first order of business is the review and approval of minutes, and we have two sets of minutes. The first set that we will approve or modify, the November minutes. Does anyone have any corrections or modifications? The November minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Terry Lertz moved that we approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Jim McChesney seconded the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Moving on to the minutes of the October meeting. These are minutes that have been corrected, and we need to finally approve them. Is there any further comment on those minutes? Any questions about them? Then do I hear a motion to approve the October 24th minutes?
I move to approve the minutes as corrected.
Thank you. Eric Von Salzen moved that we approve the October minutes. Second, Richard Vincent or Terry? Terry Lertz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Molly, can we just take a moment? We've been asked to check all the microphones one at a time so we could make sure that they're all working.
Well, if the green lights are on?
That doesn't mean it's working, but we can try if we can start.
Okay,
Terry.
well, some of them are perhaps not close enough to people,
they could be.
then that could be the problem.
But I think we got one here that isn't.
Okay.
I apologize to the chair for interrupting. But... Okay. We'll share for right now.
That's fine.
Well, is there one working there on the speaker, on the visitors table? Maybe John could have that.
Better that the speakers do
Have the next order of business is a consideration of the proposed updates to the Historic District Guidelines, and these are the updates that we're going to...
Molly, that's an old agenda. That was moved to the bottom of the agenda. The new agenda, it will be following with the cases, followed by
Okay,
schedule,
okay, so we're
followed by
moving that to later. I wondered about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, let me swear you in. Oh, thank you. Peter Hughes, who will be presenting the cases today. I need to swear you in. Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So I need a motion to open the public hearing. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Tom Schroeder made the motion to open the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Jim McChesney seconded the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So Peter, if you would present the first case for COA 19-107.
Yes, ma'am. This public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for an exterior modification with the addition of a window to a side elevation within existing gable at 70 Carolina Vista. The property can be identified in the Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 855-212-868161. The property is owned by Kirk and Victoria Atkins, and the applicant is Victoria and Kirk Atkins. Just to orientate everybody, the property is located at the corner of Carolina Vista and Ritter Road. It is located in our historic district. It's across the street from the Carolina Hotel, and it is surrounded by residential properties as well as a hotel property. But I would also characterize this property as being located in the heart of our historic district because of its proximity to the village center. The residential structure at 70 Carolina Vista is not listed as a contributing structure. However, it was originally constructed in 1911 and is surrounded by structures listed as contributing structures. The most significant one is back here. It's 65 Carolina Vista. It was constructed in 1895. It's the other corner lot on Ritter in Carolina Vista. It's located in that blue triangle. The property is a single-family residence. The applicant has proposed to match all proposed material to the existing material on site. The property is located in the heart of the historic district. None of the proposed changes will affect the footprint of the building, which is why we don't see a site plan accompanying this application. As previously stated, this request is the addition of a window. Additions of windows or doors according to the historic guidelines are considered major work and require the HBC approval. The applicant is proposing to match the proposed window in material and style to windows already existing on the site. The applicant submitted a drawing of the proposed windows. The applicant submitted a building material list. The applicant submitted a photo, and then staff retook a photo to better quantify what you're seeing here of where the window will be placed. And then staff also took this photo to show that the windows that are proposed are already in place on the structure. At this time, I'd like to submit the presentation, the application, the applicant's material, photos, and findings of fact in the official record. But I'd also like to modify the findings of fact. Eric von Salzen notified me that I made a mistake of using congruent when I should have been using congruency, and I need to modify the findings of fact to reflect that. And at that time, I'll end my presentation.
Eric, I think it's congruous for congruent.
Congruous is the word that we should be using consistently, in my view.
And this is important because congruous is the term that we use throughout the guidelines.
That is
And
correct.
so,
They mean the same thing, but they have different power because we
well,
use
slight
one in
different
the,
meanings, yes,
yeah.
yes.
I remember from 10th grade math that this congruent has some other meanings that I've forgotten and I don't want to be reminded of.
In geometry, yes.
Anyways, at this time,
So throughout our findings today.
this case, and I'll
congruent
do
will
it
be
for each case afterwards as well.
Okay, okay. Are there any questions of staff from the commissioners? Is Mr. Atkins here? Would you come forward and add to the presentation? And I'll need to swear you in. That'd be great, and we will hope the mic works for you. so-
Mr. Atkins, would you like to invite your builder with you?
Okay.
Thank
Both of you then.
We're about to get the second microphone up there, so we'll each have one.
Okay. Do you both affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. So what do you have to add to the staff report on the project?
Y'all have just as much information as I do. I did not order the window, so I don't have the material in hand. I wanted to make sure that it was approved before spending the owner's money. But I think you nailed on the head, Mr. Peter, that the window's matching the existing window as shown in that picture. It's pretty much matching everything that's existing. Simply adding one window to the gable.
Anything else to add? Any questions of the, do you have, commissioners, do you have questions of the applicant?
Just to make sure, if I understand correctly, if you back up one, Those are the two existing ones shown in that picture?
Correct.
And actually, on the reverse of the house. they
Right, and
also
then the
exist.
second one's on the reverse side of it, and that's where you're going to add two of the same identical materials, colors, et cetera, windows for the other side, which is the second picture, is that correct?
Correct.
So my question would be, probably the new windows that you're going to order are not identical to the old windows.
We're able to match the existing window. The material around the windows, just a wood window, so we're actually custom making it.
Okay. I'd be kind of interested to know how you're going to install them. I mean, you've done a sketch on a photograph here, but the existing windows, double windows, they're resting on the red tile roof. They're placed very low, so I'm kind of wondering where you're going to place the new windows in that gable. Exactly there where it's shown?
Yes, ma'am. There's actually probably 8 inches above that gable end before the window would start, so we would actually frame in a new opening from the interior of the home.
Sorry, Molly, were you
Go
done?
ahead.
The trim, just same trim as you've got all around the rest of the house?
Yes, sir, correct.
What color is that? It's like an off-green?
It's eider white.
White, okay.
But you also have something that's kind of a blue-green. Do you not?
Not to my knowledge.
The stucco is
No. Ida white, yeah.
eider white, and then the trim is a very slightly different color. I can't recall off
Okay.
the top of my head what it is, but it'll be matched,
Okay.
identical to the stucco and wood frame that we have now.
Two-unit windows be centered on the peak?
Correct, yes, sir.
Any more questions? Is anyone ready to make a motion?
I would, upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following. Did we not change the language to reflect the fact that the conclusion is not in the motion? The conclusion is after the vote?
There was a language change requested.
That has not been submitted yet.
I don't recall.
Oh, you
one
mean
being-
the changes that we're
Yes.
making, those have not been submitted?
Not since, yeah, correct.
So, upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following, that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the project as proposed, subject to any conditions imposed by the commission, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with historic district guidelines.
John Taylor has made the motion. Is there a second to the motion?
Second?
Eric Von Saltzton seconded the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. You have your COA. Congratulations.
Thank you all very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, folks.
Maybe just one other thing. I did speak to the hotel, Matt Christo, and he was very happy with this. So Carolina Hotel is happy with it.
Thank you.
The next case is COA 19-109. Bart Boudreau and on the property on Short Road.
Want to go ahead? Would you like to go ahead and swear them in since they're already seated?
Bart and your builder.
This is Sean Rodriguez. He's with Seven Lakes Engineering. He did the plans. He
Okay.
also helped me with the design in addition to Antigua design out of Seven Lakes. We came up with it together. He also helped design some beams on the inside of the house, did all the load calculations.
Okay.
And he can speak more about the roof changes
Okay.
than I can.
Okay, so Mr. Boudreau and Mr. Rodriguez, do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I do.
Thank you, ma'am. This public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for an exterior modification to include multiple roof line modifications to single-family residence at 83 Short Road. The property can be identified in Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 000-17850. The property is owned by Bart Boudreau, and the applicant is also Bart Boudreau. Just to orientate everybody once again, the property is located in between Dundee and Everett Road on Short Road at 83 Short Road. It is located within our Pinehurst Historic District, and it is located within the R10 zoning district, which is for medium-density housing, and also surrounded by R20, which is also for single-family residential. The residential structure at 83 Short Road is not listed as a contributing structure. However, it was originally built in 1925 and surrounded by structures listed as contributing structures. The property was formerly a multi-tenant building that is being returned to a single family. Much of the changes that we're seeing before us tonight is a result of multiple multi-family additions to the structure. The applicant has proposed to match all proposed material to the existing material on site. As previously stated, the applicant is requesting to modify the roofline of an existing structure. The modification of structure's roofline is considered a major work and requires HPC approval. The roofline is proposed to modify along the right and rear elevations. The right elevation modification would raise the roofline. The rear elevation modification would adjust the roofline to create a more cohesive look and also raise the roofline. On the front elevation, there were no proposed changes with the submitted application. On the rear elevation, there was proposed modification that says raised roofline in the red circle there. The roofline to be raised and modified on the left side elevation, and then on the right elevation, there's also a raised roofline modification. This is a roofing plan, which the gentleman from Seven Lakes will explain later. The applicant proposed building materials, and this is a photo from the last case that I resubmitted, so we have a visual of the left elevation. This is an interior photo which Mr. Bart Boudreau has submitted, and these are two photos that I took so you guys could better see what's going on in the rear elevation with the multiple roof lines. At this time, I would like to submit the presentation, application, applicant's material, photos, and findings of fact in the official record, but I'd also like to modify my findings of fact to change the word congruent to congruous, and at that I end my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Would you mind going back in the presentation, and I'm going to chime in a little bit and go forward and let me, hang on a second. Right there. No, go some more. Yeah, let me run that thing.
Give me them, Howard.
I think that might be the easier way.
As Peter mentioned, there's actually two modifications taking place, and I'm going to talk about the first one, and then we'll go to the second one. Where's that?
One more over, right there.
That's not,
Are you looking for the right elevation?
yeah, the right one.
One more.
One more.
There you go.
Okay. Does this have a pointer on it?
It does. It's the top button.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, if you look up here, and there was also a picture of the inside of the house that showed this box-looking tray, as he calls it. This roof right here actually plunges in the kitchen, and they built this. That's it right there. So the roof actually plunges into the kitchen, and they put this box around it. It's atrocious. I want to get rid of that and make it flush with the ceiling. So to be able to do that, we need to take this, if you see this roof line, it's kind of got a double pitch to it. We're just going to center that gable on that little shed. That's going to raise this side of the roof a bit. It's going to tie into the roof right there on the side of the house. It's going to allow that plunge into the kitchen to go away, and to me, it actually looks more symmetrical with the gables anyway. You see this right here? That gable's coming over, going to be just a tad higher and tie into the other roof.
So generally what it is, we have a difference in eave height on one side of the structure compared to the other. So it's lower on the left, so it slants as it slopes down. And what I propose to do is just correct that elevation, correct the eave height so it's all uniform, and just construct it as it was originally supposed to be, instead of having that change in slope. It's not really going to affect any runoff in stormwater when it begins to rain. And we're going to waterproof everything, tie everything correctly, and just make it look like that's what its original design was intended to be.
I'm not sure why they did it like they did it originally, but they did.
While we're on this sheet, sheet 4 of 6, Mr. Boudreau, do you have any intent to, shall we say, clean up that side of the elevation or that side of the structure? The portion toward the back looks awfully busy architecturally, and I was wondering if you're going to do anything with that.
You talking about all those windows and doors in the
Yeah, I
back?
mean, it looks like, well, I can't say.
There's a lot of windows. To me, it adds a little charm to it. We talked about doing something different, but at the end of the day, there was a bunch of that wood that was rotten. We fixed it, and we're going to leave it the way it is.
Let's call it a committee, right?
Huh?
A committee.
Well, it's going to be a little TV room, and there's a laundry room, and adds a lot of light. There's a lot of dark wood inside. It's quirky, but it's a quirky cottage, which is sort of the romance to it, I think.
May be the only one that has that as a question, but I just thought I'd raise it.
Yeah, it's different, and it's got 2 doors. My wife hates the 2 doors. We talked about taking one out, and then we said, what do you put there if you put cedar shake? And look, we even did a little pilot test to see what that would look like, and we ended up staying the way it was.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Well, now you're doing more to the roof than
Yeah.
than correcting
just
this
the first
gable.
That's just the first one right there. We'll go to the second one. Now, the second one, just as a driver, I'll let him tell you more about it, but the driver behind that, if you look at that big oak back there that's overhanging the house, it's a majestic tree. It's beautiful, but the way they bolted on that addition in the back, all these gables come together, and it's an absolute mess. It's a catch-all for all those leaves, and within a week, if you're not cleaning it, it's that deep back there, and it's all rotting. So the intent is to change that roof where it covers all those gables and makes it more congruous with the house. The changes you won't see from the front, you can only see from one side, and go ahead and kick in here, man.
Okay, so the intended changes are to the left. You can see how in the existing elevation, how that ridge line just stops right below the peak of that gable. What we intend on doing is raising the ridge line to where it runs a little bit past that peak, so we can extend the roof out to cover off the area that's been exposed to a bunch of excess leaves dropping from that tree back there. As you can see back there, that's kind of where all those leaves are dropping, is just in that crevice right there. I don't know what their original intention was for all that, but I feel like we can extend the ridge line, or extend the slope of the roof further out. As you see back here, right there, we would see the modification of the slope and just have it all slant down. You can see right about here is what the existing condition is, and we just plan on going with the same slope on the left and dropping it down to the right. So right there, it would go up a little bit higher to that second chimney, but it would not pass the peak of the existing structure back there. So we're going to stay right below it.
Would it be as high as the structure on the right side of this elevation?
Yes, we're going to keep it all uniform with that structure there. So we're not going to exceed the height.
So the net result of all of this is going to be a more simplified roofing structure, fewer
Yeah.
valleys that you
Yes,
just
'cause
collect stuff and.
The way it is just there's way too much going on there. As you can see here in the existing, it just cuts right there and it just creates that opening. And what we intend on doing is just running that back further and connecting into our valley there.
And from the front, it's not any higher than the existing gable, so you won't notice it from the front of the house at all.
So are you taking out a gable?
No, we are not
No.
removing any gables. No, all we're doing is just,
Well, except for that
We're
little
just-
bitty one.
we're just changing the peak, so it's going to center off a little bit further to the right. But we are not removing any gables at all.
That's just a little overhang. It's not a gable. It only sticks out that far. The one right above the window, the little small one, it sticks out like
Right
that.
next to the chimney, so that's going to be included when you extend the roof towards the rear of the rear
Yes,
roof.
Correct.
yes.
So then that little gable goes away.
Just that small, I
Yeah.
wouldn't even call it a gable. It sticks out like that far, but I guess officially it is, yeah.
Yes, so that would be the only gable that
It it cleans it up a bunch, though. I don't know if you noticed. Have you saw the
Oh,
back of that?
I did, and so I'm trying to reconcile what you're saying with what I saw and exactly, what's going on there.
To answer your question, yes, that little gable right there is going to be removed. We can easily keep that gable because as you can see there, we're not going to modify this gable end. So I can easily just keep that gable without removing any of this right side of it and still be able to make the modification needed to cover that back end, so to speak.
Now, you say you're going to raise the roof.
Since
Where
we
does
are
this,
gonna-
where does that come in? And we don't have any measurements here, so we don't know how much it's going to be raised. There's just essentially one section that you gave us measurements for, and that was on the right side of the elevation, the quirky little porch.
If it raises, we're not going to raise it no more than 2 feet.
Can you see the difference from the top and the bottom on where, showing that right there? Now, it's going further to the right up on that chimney.
So it's just
2
going to
feet
be,
total,
yeah.
which is still lower than the front gable on the house from the street elevation.
So as you can see right there, that's the existing location. It's going to shift over to the right where the chimney is. And the max that's going to be raised is just about 2.5 feet maximum.
And that's going to make it roughly symmetrical with that portion of the rear of the house.
Yes,
So you'll have visually 2 roof lines rather than the 3 that you have now.
yes, sir.
I think it's going to look a lot better, even taking out that small gable too, because it's busy back there.
Well, here's the thing, we have to take that on faith because we don't have, the specifics. I'm not given enough information here on exactly, what the height of the front part of the structure is. The existing, because that's the roof line that you're not going to go beyond.
Yes.
That height you're not going to go beyond. And so how much lower will this back, because it comes at right angles, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So how much lower will this back ridge line be from the front ridge line? How much do you think?
It's about like 6 feet.
I would just be a lot happier if we had some more definition on the drawings. Does anybody else have questions?
I have one simple one, I guess. The finished product, will you be trimming out with fascia boards,
Yes, sir.
or will there be exposed joist ends like
No,
on these elevations?
it'll be a facial board, and we'll do whatever we have to match the existing
But
condition.
no exposed joist ends?
No, sir.
How about gutters?
We will implement some gutters in the back for that stormwater runoff, because since we're going to create more valleys, it's going to increase some of that runoff. So we'll implement some conveyance methods for that stormwater runoff.
And it needs gutters all the way around, to be honest, but then it kind of takes away from the rafter tail, which I really like, but it needs gutters in a bad way.
You have a lot of wood there that's, you know, that could get moistened over time.
Intent is to put gutters all the way around the house.
How difficult would it be to provide us with some additional measurements, such as the chairperson has been talking about?
Could get that done.
If our approval of this project were delayed for 30 days, how serious a problem would that be?
Big problem. 'Cause this is the second time I've been here. Paid 2 permits, which I didn't mind doing. You guys tried to help me do a continuation, but I'd be disappointed to have to come back again. And there's a financial burden too, because I've got guys working and we're running out of stuff to do and need to get on this.
Is this something we could pass with the condition that additional, more detailed drawings be submitted?
I don't know how you would address that condition for measurements. And
I don't know how you would get there from here. I mean, I guess you could potentially say not to exceed 2.5 feet or to whatever the case may be, put some specifics into it, but short of that, I mean, it's hard to say we'll condition it upon you providing us additional information, because that's basically saying you don't have enough information to make your decision in the first place that you're trying to make.
Well, let me take the other side of that for a minute. There's nothing in the drawing of the rear elevation that suggests that it would be higher than the existing roof line. You can't really compare them visually. You're either in the front of the house or the back of the house, so you can't see both at the same time. And does it really matter if it's 6 inches higher or 8 inches lower, in the sense that you don't see it at the same time? We probably should have more detail than we have, but I think as long as constructed in line with the drawings, it's going to come out in a reasonable fashion, regardless of what the specific measurement is. I would feel that way, but others may not.
Could you put a stipulation or a condition that this is all approved contingent, that it's below the front elevation, that it's can't be seen from the front, or do you, I'm sorry?
That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, it's implied by the drawing, but it's a good suggestion as a condition.
Well, that's one of the issues, I think, the relative heights of the front of the major portion of the primary portion of the structure and the rear. But the other has to do with the standard of documentation that we require, and also the quality of construction that we're looking for. And those are interrelated in my mind.
So if it's 6 feet from the peak or 2 feet, how would that change what you just said?
No, the main thing is that we would like to know what we're approving. And one way for us to know what it's going to look like is to have the measurements. And we don't have that.
Well, I think just to ask, because we don't have measurements, is not going to impact the historical significance of it. So, I mean, just to arbitrarily say we must have 6 inches instead of 6.5 inches isn't that much difference. I think if the standard is it has to be below the front peak, and as long as it's constructed before the front, that's really, in my picture, the historical difference.
Well, that's the standard to historic, for historic appearance.
Right.
But I'm also talking about the standard that we require in an application in terms of the documentation and the specifics that we like to see. And it's just that I'm missing some measurements here. So it's a different kind of thing. You're talking about the historic character and
Which is
that
what our
standard.
purpose is.
And that standard, and I'm talking about what you've presented here, which doesn't give me enough information.
If I may, the last one we approved did not have any dimensions either. So why are we making an exception in this case? Because the man has told us that it's not going to be higher in the back than it is in the front. We've got that on record. What more do we need?
Well,
I understand your point, but at the same point, this gentleman has told us that a delay is not in the cards. And I think we have enough information to make a decision. That's my point.
So,
And I think he brings up a valid point. The previous one we just put in, we had no dimensions for it. How far above the peak, how far below the peak. We knew it was underneath the eaves and above the other peak, and that's all we knew. So to say that we need X dimensions on this one and none on the other, and I fully understand that each case has to be taken on its own merits. And I'm not trying to say because we did one on one case, we need to do it on another. But I think we also need to be, if there is a historical reason why we don't approve something, then that's what I think we're here for. If we're not approving it because there's no specific dimensions, and those dimensions aren't directly relevant to the historical appearance of this building, I think that's a separate issue. Yes, and trust me, I would be one of the first to talk and squawk about having all of the data that we need to make a good decision, which would normally be dimensional. But if I don't think it's appropriate to, in my book, and it's up to the vote of each and every member of this, to sit there and say that just because we're missing something that wouldn't necessarily change the historical point of it, a dimension because we would change the historical point of it, that's appropriate for this organization to do. We're here for one purpose, and that purpose is to determine the historical impact, if you will, congruency of what's going on, not to approve or disapprove the standard for which a drawing is made to, unless that standard impacts the historical point.
well, and it could. It could impact the congruousness of the structure, the proposed changes to structure. It could impact that.
Okay, it
And
could.
so that's the point that I'm making, which is another, very separate point from the, being consistent with the historic character of the structure, which you have explained very well. But I'm just saying we are, some of us, not reassured by the lack of specifics, details, measurements that we've been given here.
But I asked Mr. Hughes, in the absence of measurements, would that prejudice the ability of your office to complete a post-construction inspection to determine whether the project had been completed in accordance with what we'd been promised?
So from my perspective, from a historical and zoning perspective, it would not, because my regulations tell me it can't surpass the front roof line. So if the front elevation roof line is higher than the rear elevation, that's all I'm looking for. There are building criteria which I'm not responsible for that might dictate something different. And that time when they submit for building plans would be when that's caught. So from my perspective as a zoning official and historical planner, I would not be looking at a 3
In other words, Peter, the dimensions don't mean anything to you.
Not from my perspective.
Right.
And there's checks and balances in place to
Yeah.
make sure it doesn't go.
Not for a
You
rear-
wouldn't know what the
not for a
dimensions
rear
were, and
elevation.
how to measure in any case.
Yeah. Like I don't go out there with a, triangle engineering
With the laser pointer.
laser pointer, measure a 3/12 run. If it's 3/12 on the plans and it looks aggressively so, I might call in the building inspector, but that would be rare.
And do you think you could supply the measurements that would fill us out by close of business Monday?
Yes, I can easily go back to my office and send that in before the end of the day today.
I mean, these drawings are, I'm assuming these are correct and
Yes.
to spec. You measure them, it
Yes.
goes on, you do it in CAD or whatever program you use. So what we need to rely on is this being correct. Now, the compliance issue is a separate issue after the fact. We don't mess with that. But if we can get comfortable on what this looks like and feels like in relation to other properties in the village, that's what we make that's what I'd be prepared to make the determination on today. And then there was one other thing. Tom, I don't know who made this comment, but we don't get into the quality of the workmanship as far as builders or any of that. We don't vet builders. We don't do any of that. We just assume that it's first-class construction. It's done in line what's historically what the property looks like, continue the same trends and all of that. So I don't know who made that comment, but we want to be very clear. We do not vet builders here. We don't interview them. We're assuming that the homeowners are choosing the right people that are more than qualified and capable to do this. I just want to be very careful to put that on the record there.
And we do And they are vetted to the point that they have to meet the building inspecting codes.
Absolutely.
So, but that's not part of our purview.
Correct.
In this thing. Ours is the historical perspective
Absolutely.
of it.
Well, the historic perspective and also quality of materials. So we asked we asked for
Agreed.
samples of materials.
And
And-
that's provided, I believe.
And so that's where the details on the plans come in, and knowing what, as best we can imagine from the plans, knowing what the project's going to look like. And it's hard to tell what something's going to look like from the drawings, from the presentation. So we need as much information as we can possibly have. That's the point I'm making.
My impression from both this presentation and the previous one is that it would be hard for this project not to improve this building, no matter what the measurements are. I think this must have been a very challenging project to design and undoubtedly to undertake. And I think it's going to improve the historic district, even if ideally we would have had a little bit more detail on the plans.
Eric, I agree with you, but I don't think our motion or our decisions are based on improvement or not. They're based on congruousness. I would, without in any way attempting to limit the discussion here, I would be prepared to offer a motion subject to two constraints for consideration and improvement if people have them.
So is there any more discussion? All right, so John Taylor has a motion.
Assuming I can find the language here. Upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the product as proposed, subject to any conditions imposed, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with historic district guidelines. The two specific conditions that would be imposed are, number one, that changes to the rear roof line and rear roof elevation will be constructed with a peak lower than the front peak, and number two, that detailed plans, including measurements and changes in elevations, will be submitted to staff by close of business December 23rd.
Second.
Right. Do I hear a second?
I did.
Terry Lurch seconded the motion. Just to repeat, upon due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion and the project as proposed, subject to conditions imposed by the commission, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with the Historic District guidelines. The two conditions are that changes to the rear roof line and repeat for me, please.
Changes to the rear roof elevation will be constructed with a peak lower than the front peak.
Okay, changes to the rear roof line and rear elevation will be constructed with a peak lower than the front front ridge line. And the second condition is that detailed plans, including measurements, will be submitted to the planner by close of business Monday, December 23rd.
I said including measurements and changes in elevations. I'm quite happy with your improvements in language.
Well, I was just trying to remember.
It's fine.
Just quick question. When you say detailed plans, are we comfortable with the plans as shown just with the addition of measurements, or are we looking for something more other than what's in front of us today?
I
think we're looking for measurements.
Okay,
I'm content with this with measurements added, yes.
perfect,
The visuals are enough, the measurements would make it much better.
perfect.
All right, so are we ready to vote? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Well, congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Merry Christmas.
Very pragmatic approach, and I appreciate it.
Art, I have no doubt Bart is going to end up looking better, and to Eric's point, it's going to look better than what it is now. So
Yeah, and
if I lived across the street, I'd be really pleased.
I just want to make one other point that I can assure you, and you guys know my track record. I've done a few houses in the village, and I'm not going to cut any corners and making something right. I'm harder on a project than anybody else is. I hope you agree with that, and I just wouldn't do it if I'm not going to do it right.
And I honestly believe that and did believe it before such time that you entered into this discussion tonight. So from my personal perspective, I concur with what you said.
Thank you.
Our last case is COA 19-110, the property at 65 Cherokee Road, and I see Wayne's here, Wayne Haddock's here. Welcome.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
And let me swear you in. Do you affirm that the testimony you shall give to the commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Peter?
Yes, ma'am. This public hearing is to consider a request within the Pinehurst Historic District for an exterior modification to include the modification of a rear roof line and addition of roofing to the left side porch of an outdoor storage addition, otherwise known as a garage. The property is owned by Michael and Moira Brown. The applicant is Pinehurst Homes, and the property can be identified in Moore County Tax Registry by Moore County PIN number 000-14110. Just to orientate everybody, this property is located, once again, what I would consider the heart of the historical district, just off of Village Center. It's located on Cherokee and Azalea Road. It is located within our historic district, and it is located by a mixture of uses with residential, recreational open space, village commercial, and office professional. The residential structure at 65 Cherokee Road is a contributing structure built in 1895, also known as the Honeysuckle Cottage, and was also known as Good Luck. The applicant received a previous approval for multiple exterior modifications in August 2019 from the HPC. Those modifications included the following: re-siding, a porch addition, removal of old deck with installation of a brick patio, a rear addition, a side entry addition, and a garage addition. The structure is on the National Registry of Historic Places as one of the earliest buildings built by James Tufts. The house suffered a fire in 1950, but still retains many of its early features, such as the steep pyramid roof, central chimney, and corner porch with turn post and balusters. As previously stated, this applicant is requesting to modify the roof line of an existing structure. The modification of the structure's roof line is considered major work and requires HVC approval. These are the proposed drawings the applicant has submitted. This is the front elevation. On the left, you have the 2019 August HPC approved ones that I added as staff member, and you have what is proposed before us today as 2019. In this photo, you see that the rear elevation pitch is changing to a 12-3 pitch. In this one, you're seeing that the left elevation in the 2019 August approved one is going from a 412 pitch to a 312 pitch in the 2019 proposed along the left side there. In the 2019 HPC approved and the 2019 December HPC proposed, there's no difference noted on what was submitted. And here we have the garage addition where we see the porch is being added compared to where it was not approved in 2019. Here's the rear of the porch. The applicant filled out a building materials list, which most of it was previously approved at the 2019 meeting. At this time, I'd like to submit the presentation, application, applicant's material, photos, and findings of fact into the official record. I'd also like to modify my findings of fact to change the word congruent to congruence, or congruous, my bad, congruous. And with that, I conclude my presentation and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions of Peter? Anything to add to the project, details about the project?
I don't think so.
We got to swear him in, I believe,
Oh,
first.
that's right. Have I not done that? I thought I did that.
Oh, he did, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, you did.
You did.
You did one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I swear she did.
Why don't we go ahead and do it again, just to make sure? Yeah, right. Molly? Do you mind doing it again, just to make sure? That way we don't get caught up.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the whole, let's see, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Either way, it's done now. I'm happy.
Question, sir. What's the rationale for the changing the pitch?
The ceiling height at the rear of the house, evidently at some point in time, was a little addition in the back, is like 7'4". My client's 6'4". The little addition we're doing is a shower. I've got to have that. If he was a little smaller, I wouldn't be here. To be very honest with you. I mean, he's like, so, and it is the master shower, so I really need the height. And so we did make it congruent, I guess is the correct word. The left side, let's see, facing that, the right-hand side of the house has the same pitch where once upon a time, somebody did a little addition there, and they had to change the pitch line where it comes up, and it's got a little bit of a slant. We mocked that exactly with what we were doing on the other side, so it would be congruent with the house. We were trying not to introduce anything
Part in one area and you have to
architecturally.
chase it all around the house.
Right, we didn't want to introduce anything different to the house that wasn't already there.
Yes, Wayne, I was a little concerned when I saw 3 on 12. It conjures up leaks and so on, and flashings, and of course, based on your experience and credibility, I'm sure there's no worry there. Is that going to be a rubber roof possibly at that point?
No, it'll be shingles. Yeah.
Mike, so you can be heard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, typically, we don't try to do anything less than a 4, but a 3, 3.5 is acceptable. I mean, the shingle companies will still warranty it, and you cannot get below that, which we do everything we can not to, but, there's things you can do. It's not, like this elephant skin you can put under the shingles, which, is a lot better than tar paper. So, we'll do
And
stuff like
he's
that.
not going to get any shorter.
Right. Yeah,
I'd
exactly.
go the other way. He's not going to get any taller.
Yeah.
At least we all hope he doesn't get taller or shorter.
That's a good question. Yeah.
So the other modification is the new porch over the
Correct.
doorway to the, I'm going to say garage, but it's really now a guest house garage in the
right.
rear.
Right. Unfortunately, our architectural designer missed the ceiling height in that garage, and we started working on it. The door that he had drawn on the drawings would not fit in the ceiling height that was in the garage. It looks a lot better anyway to do the little gable roof and actually have a covered porch. That, when you look out of the house itself at the rear, that's what you see. You can't see it from the alley or you can't see it from the front, but, it does add quite a bit to the appearance of the rear yard.
Questions of Wayne? Any discussion?
Can I add just a couple of things?
Certainly.
Is it okay? All right. This really kind of has something to do with what I'm looking at. Now, I've got all my dimensions. I've got everything here. November the 8th is the first time I presented this to Alex. The village staff is extremely professional and very good. I have a lot of faith in what their decisions are. And I was going to have to present drawings and come back to the committee. We've stopped the project for 6 weeks, so I can come back in here. I felt like, that, I did everything I could to make it match the roof. I'm reading what I have here, so any changes in the roof has to come in front of the commission. You guys just passed one that's probably the hardest roof I've ever seen as a builder for 30 years. See.
Well, and we will, on occasion, call a special meeting on a second Thursday of the month.
Yeah.
For.
It'll
for-
be this month.
No, but I'm just saying, because as you said, you had to take the project offline for a period of time for this approval.
Yeah.
And we try to be amenable, when we try to, facilitate where we can, and that's one way that we could have done that, particularly given that we had all the background information, the big information on the project, and these are just small tweaks.
Well, I really appreciate what you do, and I mean that. I'm not just saying that as a token of anything at all other than I do truly mean it. You know, you guys have got your hands full because
It's been fun to watch the first part of the project start to unfold. So,
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, you know, you know, I did 3 of Bart Boudreaux's houses. And, you know, and he, I have a lot of respect for Bart. He's, you know, really cares about what he does in the village of Pinehurst, and he cares about Pinehurst. And, you know, arms around this, and as a credit to him, he was smart enough to hire an engineer, you know, to do something with that, you know. And there's a lot of folks out there that wouldn't hire an engineer, and they're going to come here and sit in front of you. I mean, that's tough.
And that's exactly, you've just put your finger on the problem, which is,
That's right. I know.
if you don't have engineer quality information before you, or the
Yep.
kind of information that you always provide, we don't really have any control over what we're approving. I mean, we can't guarantee anything about it. We just hope it's going to be well, they say they're going to raise the roof. Well, how high, you know?
Well, but your building department will require a set of plans with dimensions on it before he can start, just so you know.
Back up. Buddy,
I can do the motion.
okay, Terry?
On due consideration of the application package submitted and the testimony given, the Historic Preservation Commission concludes the following: that the applicant has satisfied the burden of persuasion, and the project as proposed, subject to any conditions imposed by the commission, is congruous with the Pinehurst Historic District and consistent with historic district guidelines.
I hear a second?
Second?
Richard Vincent seconds the
Second.
motion. So motion made by Terry Lurz, seconded by Richard Vincent. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you, Wayne.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Merry Christmas, and we appreciate your time, sir.
Oh, my pleasure.
Molly, we need to close the public hearing and then open a regular meeting.
Oh, I guess I need a motion to close the public hearing.
so moved.
Second.
John Taylor moved that we close the public hearing. Tom Schroeder seconded the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And now we have a couple of bits of business, the proposed additions to changes to the guidelines that we talked about during our last meeting.
Before you guys do that, do you guys have any questions about the minor work items approved by staff?
I have none.
Nope.
Done.
All right. So now we're looking at the HPC schedule for next year.
You want to do the schedule? All
Yeah, we'll
right.
do this. We'll do the easy stuff first.
Okay. So the schedule is essentially, as it always is, the fourth Thursday of the month, except during November and December.
That's correct.
And still at 4 PM, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, yes.
I move we accept the schedule.
Second.
Okay, somebody down there. Tom Schroeder moved that we accept the proposed schedule for 2020. Terry Lurz seconded the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so last month, I presented some changes or proposed changes and updates to the guidelines. I incorporated your guys' editorial comments, which was basically just some minor grammar stuff. At this point, what staff would be looking for is just your guys' recommendation. It's not an approval, but it'd be a recommendation, because you guys can't approve the guidelines.
Council does all
I just
the
want to make sure you
approving,
guys
but
know
we
that
recommend
when you
it.
vote, these don't get implemented, and that they aren't your right to, approve.
They must be approved by the village council. They're the only group that can approve
Correct.
the changes. We're just recommending, we're voting to recommend that
That's it.
this what goes to the council. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, so we need a motion to recommend these guideline changes to the council. Jim?
Motion.
Jim
Second.
moves that we recommend these changes to the guidelines to the village council. Tom Schroeder seconds the motion.
Okay.
It was me, but it doesn't matter.
Jim McChesney,
Yes. Do you need what?
We need to vote on that, yeah.
Oh,
I'm trying to get a signal from Kelly, I'm sorry.
did it again, I'm sorry.
Do you want to say the motion again?
Motion to accept as written.
Motion to accept the guidelines as written.
Can I make a recommendation? The motion would be to recommend these guidelines? Not that I'm trying to make your motion for you.
accepting it, but
We are not
That's
accepting.
right.
Consider it. So, can we revise?
Do we have a motion and a second on the table yet?
Well, Jim is going to
I'm trying.
say the motion.
We motion that the guidelines as submitted by the Planning Inspections Department be approved or accepted and submitted to council. No? Does that sound good? Are we getting better?
Yeah, you did, you nailed it.
Second, again.
Now we have a motion and a second on it.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. All right, before you guys go, I'm just gauging temperatures on doing some trainings throughout next year, maybe 2. Would you guys want to meet outside of our regular meeting or just tack trainings on to the end or before meetings? We're just trying to work the calendar.
What is the nature of the training?
Just procedural. So, what is our responsibility here? What's an evidentiary hearing? How do we accept evidence? And all that kind of stuff, so that we're just making sure that we're procedurally correct. And then if you guys have any recommendations for additional trainings that you'd like to see, we'd be more than happy to implement those. But we're doing this with our BOA, we're doing this with our planning and zoning. It's not because you guys are misbehaving, it's just we're constantly trying to improve and to make sure that we're doing things right.
We're not misbehaving?
Well, Tom is
I'm
misbehaving.
disappointed.
And Peter,
Reason you sit next to Peter.
I'm joking.
Yeah.
I really am.
your estimate of the time these sessions would take?
Hour, maybe. Well,
I'm
the
happy to
plan
do it
would be
after
to-
this session,
Yeah.
if that works for you guys.
Yeah, I think that's
Question-
one of the questions. Do we want us to, schedule a separate day, or shall
And
we just do it on the
We're
same
happy
day
to
as
do
we
it
have the
as a whole
hearings?
group. We're happy to do multiple trainings with different groups.
If we do it as a whole group, then it has to be a public meeting.
Meeting, yeah. That's
I
the
mean,
other
which is
caveat.
not a problem, because I think
You're
the
already
attendance
here.
you see right at the moment would probably be about the attendance you would get to a training meeting.
But we have to post a work
But we'd have
session,
to post it.
just the way the council does.
Correct.
I think from my schedule, I'd rather do it the same day, because then I'll just block out a little more time for something I'm already blocking out time for.
I second.
That's where we figured you would stand, but we wanted to ask the question.
Thank you for asking.
All right.
Appreciate it.
That's all I have for you guys.
And part of this is about motion making and the various kinds of motions that you can make, because we have 3 options. And if you choose the option to refuse to approve, then we need to talk a little bit about how you give reasons for refusing to approve the application, because you have to be very specific.
Even though that hasn't been a
It's-
problem in 6 years, but if it ever comes up.
Yes, and so just a way, because that's one of the ways we protect ourselves should the case be, should the decision be appealed.
I would like to look at it as that's the way we do it the correct way.
Yes, but then there's that, got to be well defended here.
And Peter, you said 2 work sessions. I assume January is going to be a really slow month.
We could do it next month.
I'm thinking we may have a 5-minute meeting here. and
I
maybe
can tell you
one
right
case.
now, I don't have any applications in, and the
Maybe that's the way
deadline
to do
is
it.
January 2nd.
Uh,
So it
Yeah.
could be that next
So-
meeting
so
would
that'll
be
be a
the
good
easiest,
time.
since we may not have.
And if you can be prepared for that
Okay.
meeting, and it looks like we're only going to have 2 simple things, then it might be a good time to put that into the
Yeah.
agenda.
So my intent would be for us to watch a module from UNC Chapel Hill School of Government that goes on about evidentiary hearing and quasi-judicial, and kind of just use that as a starting point to talk amongst us on how we should do it, and then, send you guys some reading material along with that.
Like the thing that you sent about minutes,
Correct.
remember?
Yep.
From School of Government.
By the way,
Which
Tom did
might
that
be
the
good.
correct way, just so we're all trying to be correct here. He sent it to us all individually, so that way it wasn't considered a meeting.
That's right.
I just want to reiterate that. If you want to send it to everybody, that's great, just do it individually.
get you right.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
John Taylor, Tom Schroeder seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Shelby?